Not much to tell, and be honest about what happened with my dad, and some of it was not really wonderful stuff, and what to leave alone. And but the thing that happened over time, over the process of writing the book, was that it became clearer and clearer to me the empathy I had for my father, Leonard Nimoy. And that came out of really understanding and really living with the fact that this is a guy who came to LA with nothing at 18 years old. He told his parents he wanted to leave Boston and go to Hollywood to study acting, and they were really upset with him to the point where they told him that they would not support him in doing that at all. So he had to generate his own cash in Boston to come out to LA, 3-day train trip. He told me he miscalculated, he didn't even have enough money for food to make it out on the 3-day train trip. He came to LA with not many contacts, with basically nothing, and had to hustle to survive and try to create this career in Hollywood. And then 7 years later, he had a family of 4. I came along at 56, he arrived in 49. By 56, he's got a family of 4 to support. More hustling, more odd jobs, all the while pursuing this career without any help. There's no economic fallback for him. And it's just a really desperate time for my dad. And to look at what he had accomplished, I mean, it's a real Horatio Alger story. It's a real, kid from a lower middle class who did good. And it gave me more of a sense of empathy for him. I never saw, even after his success, I never saw my grandparents, Nana and Papa, express feelings of pride or love for my dad. I know they felt it. They were giddy about all the attention. Not only was he getting, that they were getting. You guys were writing my grandparents to tell them how much, you loved them. And my grandmother was just embarrassed and loved it. She loved the attention, but they were not emotive, demonstrative people. So my dad didn't have that kind of emotional support. So the process of writing it created more and more empathy on my part for what this kid from Boston had accomplished over a short period of time. On the set, there was a guy named Jim Rugg, and he was the special effects supervisor. Now, he's a guy who made all the set effects, all the stuff going on the bridge of the Enterprise, right? And there's a lot of little colored knobs that they light up, right? And they made those knobs on the set, and they're made of this epoxy resin. And the minute you stepped on the set, you smelled Jim Rugg's workshop. And it was like a glue sniffer's paradise. Now, I was not a glue sniffer, but it was like, I had, Marvel models and airplane glue, which I love just as much as any other kid. It's like, that hit you right away. It was great, it was a Disneyland experience of being on the bridge, of going through the corridors, of being in the cruise quarters, of being in sick bay, being on the transporter room. It was a wonderful, exciting experience.
So when, when William Shatner had two of his daughters, they were in Miri, you've seen the episode. So when you were on the set, how was William Shatner to you? How was DeForest Kelley to you? Do you have memories of them being nice to you?
Yeah, they were all very lovely to me, all of them. Yeah, they're just a great group of people. Look, there were issues on the set, that's for sure. Just read Leonard's autobiography. They were lovely people, and it was a pleasure to be among them, and I still love bumping into them to this day. They feel like family, yeah, it was a welcoming atmosphere. And then there was Leonard, doing his Spock, in his Spock bag, as George Takei would say. He was in his Spock bag, meaning doing his thing, don't bother Leonard, don't approach Leonard. He's not, they were always playing pranks on each other. That was the whole idea with when they were shooting that scene, when the assistant director pulled me off and took me into Fred Phillips' makeup trailer, and he sat me down and cut my hair and shaved my eyebrows, which never fully recovered, by the way, and stuck a pair of my dad's oversized ears on me, It was a very memorable experience. I can still see myself standing in the turbo lift waiting for my cue. I'm still there, and it's just bizarre, and it's wonderful. I have a dad who didn't have great modeling from his parents in terms of parenting. My grandparents, whom I love dearly, but they were Russian immigrants. They were from Ukraine, but they considered themselves Russian back then. These are people who lived in a shtetl, they lived in a small village, and then found themselves smack in the middle of an urban center, Boston, Massachusetts, in the west end of Boston, right next to downtown. It was culture shock for them. And my dad really they just didn't have a very loving relationship. And my Uncle Mel felt the same way. He never knew what his dad was thinking. And and my grandmother wore the pants in the family. She was tough. You know, she had to hide in a hay cart, is how the story goes, to get out of Ukraine through Poland. So my dad and I had an awkward, distant relationship to begin with. That his priority was not family. His priority was succeeding in his career. You know, family was a distant priority to him. It was my mother who really ran that show. She's the unsung hero in all this, by the way. It was my mother. So I just didn't have any connection to him, and we saw very little of him during these Star Trek years, and then he went right into Mission Impossible, and that was just as demanding. So for 5 solid years, during my formative years, Dad wasn't around. And when he was around on the weekends, a lot of times he was off making personal appearances, meeting with you guys, the fans, all over the country. He was flying all over to state fairs and other venues, to meet with the fans and to make fast cash. That was Leonard's number one, make fast cash. And the other interesting thing is that one of his avid fans, Bonnie, Bonnie, she's been sending me stacks of fan magazines from the period, like Star and Screen, and I don't even know, there's so many fan magazines, and and I've forgotten them. There are a lot of pictures of the whole family in there, and you see these pictures of my dad, and he is flat out wasted. You look at these pictures of him, and you can see a man who is burnt to a crisp. Just look at his eyes. He's wasted, because he had never worked so hard in his life. He says, For the Love of Spock, before Star Trek, he never had a job that lasted for 2 weeks. And now he's 10 months on the soundstage for 12 to 14 hours a day. Come home, learn his lines, eat his dinner, go to bed, start all over again the next day. Because he's got to be in, Fred Phillips' makeup chair by 6:30 in the morning. This is the whole point of being in recovery. You got to give it away. You don't get it until you start giving it away. You have to be of service immediately. It's a program of recovery. It's a program of action. You got to do stuff. This is my way of trying to share. It is my share with all of you and all my readership, hopefully, that it's possible to recover from dysfunctional family relationships. You don't have to be an addict or an alcoholic to be in recovery, period. 12-step recovery, yes, thank you. 12-step recovery are just tools to live life on life's terms and deal with challenging situations. That's all it is. It's very simple. And they helped me, and I needed them. I'm going to talk about it. I needed them because I didn't know what to do with Leonard. I had no clue what to do with Leonard Nimoy. I could not figure the guy out. I didn't know how to solve our problem. And I'm hoping that by being specific and being honest and being vulnerable in the book, that it's going to resonate with people and hopefully inspire some people to try to think about going into their own recovery and reconciling and trying to repair family relationships. We have so much freaking dysfunction in this world and so much polarization. I'm hoping that this might be a way to help people heal.
Let's talk about the first excerpt you'd like to read about.
All right, here we go. You guys ready? I had so much trouble bonding with Dad when I was a kid, which isn't to say he didn't try. He took me fishing back in the day when there was a huge barge anchored way out in the Santa Monica Bay, and sometimes we'd go sailing. He was an excellent sailor from his years growing up on the Charles River in Boston. He had a natural feel for the wind and the water, and would give me clear orders when to switch the jib sail when he was turning the boat. I remember one day we were at the rental office at Marina del Rey, and it was windy as hell. The guy at the desk had just said to the people in front of us that he was only outfitting the boats with mainsails. Then he turned to Dad and said, "Mr. Nimoy, you know how to handle yourself out there, so I'm also going to give you a jib." I always felt secure with Dad when we were doing these kinds of activities, whether we were sailing a boat in rough conditions or he was flying his single-engine Piper aircraft through a rainstorm. He had a focus and a confidence that put me at ease. Then again, sailing with him was more of a meditative experience than an opportunity for us to connect. And sitting for hours in a noisy cockpit with his eyes fixed on the controls or searching the sky at 10,000 feet was not exactly conducive to conversation. That was the difficulty I had with my father. There was always an emptiness between us. We were missing a deep emotional connection. He sometimes told me that he loved me, but it was so hard to feel it. We never watched TV together, never played catch. He never came to my Little League games. Except for our occasional excursions, we never hung out together. It just wasn't his thing. But I was always proud of him. One December night in 1964, he brought home some Polaroids of himself in makeup and wardrobe for a pilot episode he was working on. It was one of those I'll never forget this moments, as he handed me the pictures, front and back shots of Mr. Spock. It was the early Spock, the primitive Spock. Rough, uneven haircut, bushy eyebrows, and those ears. Even in 1964, when nobody had heard of Star Trek, the 8-year-old me had watched enough Outer Limits and My Favorite Martian episodes to understand exactly what I was looking at. I mean, The Galaxy Being, the first Outer Limits episode, had a huge impact on me. A scary but benevolent alien accidentally arrives on Earth and is misunderstood and treated badly. A sci-fi trope that always appeals to us outsiders and social misfits trying to find our way in a sometimes unwelcoming world. And now here was Dad playing the half-human, half-alien Mr. Spock, soon to take that trope to a whole new level. All these years later, I can still feel the excitement I felt that night when I was given my first glimpse of this strange-looking man from outer space. This is what I've been working on all week, Dad said, obviously pleased by my reaction. It was a big moment for him, a co-starring role in the pilot of a potential new TV series. In Dad's family, his older brother Melvin was the star because of his academic career, something my father had no intention of pursuing. When Dad told his parents he wanted to be an actor, they were devastated. It was as if he had told them he wanted to join the circus. Dad always played a supporting role to my uncle, but now he was coming into his own, and I shared in the excitement of this new development. It was a way for us to connect on a deeper level, to have something that appealed to me as an avid fan of science fiction, and to my dad as an artist striving to get to another level in his career.